All right, how y'all doing tonight, ladies and gentlemen? I'm Josh with American Gnome Broadcasting, um, and I've got some good stuff for you tonight, as you can see on screen. Twilight Zone stuff, something from uh, Penguin Zero or Moist Critical Charlie, whatever you want to call him, on like an alien mothership type thing going down. It's weird. And then this, who is this from? This one is from. Mythical Films. We've seen some of his stuff before. So and then we've got some stuff coming from the devs on Diablo 4's updates and their how the beta is coming along. Especially since I think this weekend the open beta is coming. So. And then we've got some stuff to end off the evening. But as is tradition, we shall start with the important stuff. Everybody say hi to Mr. Gomi, if I can. Hi, buddy. Hi. Say hi to everyone. He's a little. I had to give him his flea medicine a little while ago, so he was a little bit mad at me, but he's okay. Huh, buddy? How you doing, buddy? Yeah. That little guy right there. Keys depression today. And I'll never be able to thank him enough for the work he does. It's not all doom and gloom, but things are tough sometimes. Okay. So this is Fascinating Horror. I believe I've come across them before. This is about the Twilight Zone movie. I believe the one with John Lithgow. But it could be. No, I think it's the one with John Lithgow because it's this is one where yeah. So let's check it out instead of me musing about it.
On the 23rd of July, 1982, production was underway for a film version of the popular science fiction horror television series, The Twilight Zone. On this particular day, cast and crew would be filming an intense action scene set in a war zone. A shoot involving a real helicopter, pyrotechnic special effects, waist-deep water, and 2 child actors. This complex scene would ultimately go catastrophically wrong, and the fallout from it would change the movie industry forever. The Twilight Zone, first broadcast in 1959, was a popular sci-fi horror anthology television series. Each episode would be a standalone story, usually featuring some fantastical or surreal elements, and almost always ending with an unexpected twist. Most episodes began with a distinctive narrative introduction, which always ran along similar lines. You're traveling through another dimension, a dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. A journey into a wondrous land whose boundaries are that of imagination. That's the story up ahead.
Excuse
The
me.
next stop, the Twilight Zone. Over the course of many years,
He's
the
used to
Twilight
that
Zone
one.
consistently caught the imagination of
Make
viewers,
sure I don't have anything
leading
in my
to
beard.
significant success and many spin-off projects. There have been both television and radio series, integrations with theme park rides, and many references in pop culture to this hugely influential media franchise.
Maybe
In the early 1980s, the idea for a Twilight Zone movie arose, and the prospect was exciting enough to attract the attention of legendary film director Steven Spielberg.
Yep.
He wouldn't be the only director
Certainly did.
involved, however.
Sorry, ladies and
The film
gentlemen.
would be an anthology of 4 separate tales, 3 of them retellings of existing Twilight Zone episodes. Each story would have a different director. John Landis, a director best known for comedy films such as An American Werewolf in London and National Lampoon's Animal House, was hired to direct one of the other segments. His story would see a bigoted man magically transported back in time to experience firsthand the terrible treatment some of the groups of people he hated were historically subjected to. In one scene, the man would flee a Vietnamese village at night while being shot at by American soldiers. As he fled, he would carry to safety 2 children from the village, thus somewhat redeeming himself before the end of the story. Vic Morrow, a prolific film and TV actor from the time, was hired for the role. Casting the 2 children he would save, however, was somewhat harder. Labour laws meant that filmmakers had to get special permission for any shoots involving minors, and that it wasn't permitted for children to film late at night or to take part in scenes involving pyrotechnic special effects. To get around this restriction, director John Landis and his producers illegally hired 2 children related to friends of crew members. They would pay the parents of the children in cash and carefully avoid mentioning the presence of
There's a
children
reason
to shoot's fire safety
that we
and
have
welfare officer. The children
rules.
hired were 7-year-old Micah Din Lee and 6-year-old Renee Shin-Yi Chen. Neither child was an actor, but both were outgoing and adventurous, and their parents believed that they would enjoy the experience of being involved in a real Hollywood production. One parent of each child would be
Mr.
present for
Landis.
the shoot, and they were assured that there would be no pyrotechnics or dangerous stunt work,
Oh.
only some loud noises.
So
On the 23rd of July, 1982, the time...
So you know how you go into GameStop. So you know you're just going in there and you're like, man, I'm just getting a controller so that I can make the most use of my Game Pass, right? And you walk in and everything's like, oh yeah, that's cool. Not really my thing, but I say, well, I get in and you're like, and then they get you with the pop. It's I don't care about the number. It's G.I. Joe. It's Serpentor. Fuck yeah. Yeah. Just wanted to let you know, like I don't really like. I have like 1, 2, 3. This is my 4th pop. Like, you know, and there's one right fucking down the street from me. So if I wanted pops, I could get pops. I could spend my whole motherfucking paycheck on pops if I wanted to. I did want to buy some things while I was in the GameStop, but they were not really pops. I just started to see things, and I was like, I need to eat this week. So, say hello to Mini Serpentor. He has now joined the ranks of Mini Witch King on Fell Beast, which I think is my best find ever. I got that thing for, I think it was like $15 maybe. It might have even been cheaper than that because it was on clearance. I've got I believe that's Fallout 3, because that's the T T45, I believe. I think that's T45 power armor. It might be T50. No, no. I think it's T45 because I think that's a Fallout 3 uh, laser rifle, isn't it? What's this? What's this guy? I think it's the T45. Yeah. Because this is Fallout 3 series. Okay, yeah, it's T45. I know there's a T50. That's clearly not the T51. It doesn't have any of the fabric on it. It has that uh, power box fucking chest panel right there with the handle on it, where it always reminds me of like you're supposed to pick it up by that handle or something, or supposed to be able to uh, get to the top part of the power armor if they're servicing it. Maybe that's it. Like it's a handhold for like getting to the upper parts of the power armor when it's being repaired. But yeah, so I've got him, and then I've got the Fallout 4, the Vault Dweller, Fallout 4. Um, sure that's Fallout 4. This one could be. Yeah, no, that's Fallout 4 because that's the combat armor. Yeah, so new pop. At some point, I will put a little bit of lighting in there because I know you're supposed to have some kind of something to look at in the back instead of staring at my motherfucking mug all the time. But I've always been practical about how I go about things, so I will slowly but surely start jazzing up the set and everything. Just you can't. It's hard to see, but that right there on my door, that is a vintage ET pillowcase. It's one of my most prized possessions. That's why it's pinned up there. And it's very, very faded, but you can kind of see in the corner right here, that's the spaceship right there, and then the little girl and their older brother and Elliot, and then there's E.T. right there. I believe I had the whole sheet and blanket set at one time, but I also remember having G.I. Joe and also He-Man sheet and bed sets. Really wish I'd gotten to hang on to all of those, but such is the way of life. Just like all my action figures and my G.I. Joes, my He-Man, my Thundercats, my Transformers. I had that Transformer that transformed into a tank, a spaceship, and it was a gun, but it wasn't Megatron. It was like one of the triple changers. I had a lot. I had to see. I wasn't. I didn't care about sides when I was collecting my. Sorry. When I was collecting my Transformers, I was just like whatever was the fucking coolest. And they were expensive back in the day, but they were also made out of some of the most durable fucking material known to man. Especially the older ones that were made out of stainless steel. You could literally you could take somebody out with one of those things. Like you literally, bap, they got concussion. I love my grandmother, but there's a couple things that I'll never forgive her for doing. One of them was getting she sold my complete set, complete with sword, die cast Voltron, the real one, the Mac Daddy one, not the big one. No, the one that was like the one you saw in the motherfucking cartoon, and all 5 lions, and they were each one of those lions was made out of fucking die cast metal, and you had to fucking like put them into place, and like that motherfucker, it satisfying clicked into place, and you literally had the full Voltron. And I remember because one of the wings was broken, and I had them, and it had the chunky ass fucking not chunky and like all around, but like it was made out of die cast metal too. So that bitch was fucking like a metal opener. It was great, and she fucking sold that motherfucker. I had good stuff. I had the GI Joe, the Cobra side, but it was like a sort of like a Gustav gun. Like it came with a trooper and they had the dome helmet and everything, and it was literally like the big uh, rail carrier tanker car thing, and it had the giant fucking Gustav gun on it and everything. Could still take it back, take that motherfucker out with a block of thermite, but that was GI Joe's business, not I whatever. Um, I had lots of good toys when I was little, and I'm very angry that they were. I mean, you can't, I got to play with them. I had my time. Oh yeah, I had Ninja Turtles original series. Um, I think I've still got. Um, I think I've still got one of my Ninja Turtles from that era. It was slightly. Um, I think it was a '90s, late '90s era. But the evil turtle, the one that was the snapping turtle, I still have him, and I somewhere, and I really like. I liked the figure work. Not a lot of articulation, but there was a lot of detail that went into the actual figure. Um, Especially when you got the right ones. I remember there was one Ninja Turtles ally who was like he was like a giant fish tank or something. Like he was like a like you. That's where that went. Um, like you could literally fill him with water and wash the bits in his chest cavity fucking float around, and it was like junk and trash and everything. Uh, that was a particularly nasty sneeze. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. That's just. Um, Now I'm all fucking distracted and shit. Yeah. So like he was like born out of the trash or something, or I don't remember, but he was a really cool Ninja Turtles ally. I had Casey Jones. I remember I had him. Um, I think I had Yojimbo. I had I had a few things from Ninja Turtles. I had a lot of other things too. I got a when I have more room in here, I have some McFarlane stuff from the late mid to late '90s, early 2000s. The action figures. Um, I think I have a version of Spawn. Um, I think it was not Viking Spawn. It was like Dark Ages Spawn or something like that. Big ass fucking bruiser. Yeah, I have one that was from the Apocalypse too. From the Apocalypse Spawn series. That was a particularly good series. If you want to go check it out, I'm sure you could find it somewhere. But it was like things went to fucking pot. Um, um, Humanity lost. Somebody betrayed us. And a new spawn awakens, and it's fucking again, I have some issues somewhere. Maybe I should bring those out. And I know I can't do some stuff because of copyright, but I can at least show you some stuff. I have to go by my mom's house, get some things, or see if what I have over here. Maybe I'll do that tonight after my cousin leaves for work, because some of my stuff is in there, and I don't know if it's comic books that's in there or no. I don't think comic books are in there. I think those are at her house. But anyway, there's a whole anti-pope, and there's this stuff well, it's necroplasm, but like in the Apocalypse, like there's like it's green slime, and it's got bugs and everything, and worms, and it, filth, and like the scum, and like they pour into somebody, and like it turn them into like zombies and everything that are sentient and all this. The artwork is so awesome, and they're like Apocalypse demons from the Bible, and all kinds of crazy stuff that goes down. And one of the most satisfying ends to the battle in a comic book run that I've had the pleasure of witnessing, especially with that tone. Then there was Dark Ages Spawn, which is Cogliostro. I think that was him. Yeah, because he was the Hell Knight. There was Viking Spawn, which is I think Viking Spawn is the one I have. He's enormous. That guy is fucking big. I think I've also got I've got a couple things. I have some ideas, but the thing is that I have a cat, and sometimes I have other cats visiting, so I have to worry about where I hang stuff. I mean, they're not super destructive or anything, but the thing is, I don't have a lot of room to display stuff. And what room I have is for clothes and the knickknacks that I already have made space in here for. Alright, I've gotten off topic. I've taken my dab. Let's get back to the Twilight Zone.
Time had come to film the intense action sequence where Vic Morrow's character would flee a village under heavy gunfire. The location chosen was Indian Dunes, a film ranch near the Six Flags Magic Mountain amusement park in Valencia, California. A mock village was constructed, and the various set pieces were prepared, including an authentic Bell UH-1 Iroquois helicopter. Flying this helicopter was Dorsey Wingo, a pilot who had served in the Vietnam War and had experience with this specific type of helicopter. At the same time, however, Wingo had no experience navigating the hierarchy of a film set. He would undertake 3 flights that evening to allow the filming of 3 different shots. The first flight went well, but during the second, the detonation of a pyrotechnic effect blasted so much water into the rotors of the helicopter that it disrupted Wingo's ability to see. He complained about this to a production manager, telling them that subsequent explosions should not be as powerful or as close, and voicing his concern that, as well as water, debris could be blasted up into the rotor blades. There are conflicting accounts as to whether these complaints reached director John Landis, and how seriously they were taken if they did. After the production manager spoke to Landis, pilot Dorsey Wingo was told not to worry. The time came to shoot the scene in which Vic Morrow would carry the two children across the river. At this stage, it was around 2:30 a.m. Dorsey Wingo was at the controls of the helicopter, hovering at a height of around 7.5 meters or 25 feet above the set, accompanied by several other crew members. John Landis was on the ground nearby, coordinating the action. Shooting began. Multiple cameras tracked Vic Morrow as he waded across the river, a child under each arm, pyrotechnic effects and squibs exploding around them. At one point, he stumbled, dropping Renee Chen into the water. As he rushed to pick up the child, a nearby pyrotechnic effect detonated so forcefully that the resultant flames engulfed the tail rotor of the hovering helicopter. Dorsey Wingo lost control, and the aircraft immediately crashed down into the water on top of Vic Morrow, Micah Din Lee, and Renee Shin-Yi Chen, killing them instantly. Emergency services were called to the scene, but the injuries inflicted were so catastrophic that there was no possibility of survival for the three victims.
Damn.
Dorsey Wingo and several other crew from the helicopter were taken to hospital with minor injuries, but soon released. Funerals were arranged for those who had lost their lives. Many mourners at Vic Morrow's funeral were surprised when director John Landis turned up uninvited to give a eulogy. During this speech, Landis not only mourned the loss of the actor, but also emphasized how sudden, unpredictable, and impossible to prevent the accident had been. Landis also attended the funerals of Micah and Renee, again without invitation. An investigation into the cause of the crash was launched by the National Transportation Safety Board. They concluded that the pyrotechnic effect had blasted debris up into the rotors of the helicopter and also caused some heat damage. This had led to the loss of control and the disastrous crash. While the mechanical cause could be clearly established, who was to blame was another question altogether. Soon after the crash, lengthy and complicated legal proceedings began. There was both a criminal trial and a civil suit. Several senior members of production staff were acquitted of any wrongdoing. Dorsey Wingo, a helicopter pilot, was criticized for both his failure to act more strongly on his concerns and for comments he made during the trial that actor Vic Morrow could have moved out of the way. He was ultimately cleared of criminal charges. Director John Landis received the most attention, with many
bad
claims
manners
made
to
about
blame
his
the
behavior and attitude on set. Several people recalled him shouting for the helicopter to fly lower, directly before the crash. Others alleged that they had heard him joking about being thrown in jail for hiring children illegally, and joking that he might lose the helicopter. It was also claimed that he had ignored advice about safety on set before, and had used live ammunition to create bullet impact effects on plants earlier in the production. Landis denied these claims, and was ultimately acquitted of any criminal wrongdoing. Multiple civil claims were settled out of court in favor of the bereaved. The year after his acquittal, John Landis invited the jury who had cleared him to a special screening of his latest film as a thank you for their decision. He went on to have a long and productive career. The disaster led to significant changes in the film industry. Warner Brothers began to draw up guidelines for any filming with potentially dangerous acts or elements. The Directors Guild of America started a telephone hotline to quickly answer safety and best practice queries from producers and directors, while the Screen Actors Guild introduced another telephone hotline for its members to report shoots that they felt were unsafe. Pyrotechnic effects became more tightly regulated. The business of making movies, particularly movies which involve risky stunts and complicated action sequences, is still a dangerous one. There are still many issues around safety on set. The changes made in the aftermath of the Twilight Zone disaster, however, represented a huge step forward in empowering everyone involved in the movie business to recognize, report, and ultimately prevent unsafe situations. The Twilight Zone movie was released, with a cut-down version of the first story still included. It received mixed reviews, but was a financial success and built interest in the Twilight Zone franchise. Director Steven Spielberg, who had previously been friends with John Landis but severed ties with him after the accident, later said, "No movie is worth dying for.
Yep.
I think people are standing up much more now than ever before to producers and directors who ask too much."
Thank you so much to Fascinating Horror. And so, as a sci-fi and fantasy fan, and as somebody that also sometimes wants to be as optimistic as I can and see the silver lining in things, and also like hope that we can overcome a particular bloodthirst as a species. Like, I'm not saying we have to be perfect, but like, goddamn, I can understand why aliens don't really fuck with us like that, or haven't really fucked with us since, way back when we were still very, very capable of great things in the future. I mean, we did a lot of great things in the future, but I think we can all agree that we've kind of fucked it up. Anyway. So here's hoping.
Also, I totally forgot to look this up. What's this shit about the Pentagon talking about a mothership?
Yeah. Penguin Zero, Moist Critical, Charlie, whatever.
Pentagon believes an alien mothership could be eyeing Earth. What? Last week, officials stated that the supposed alien artifacts could send small probes to our planet in order to study it.
You're going to make content
NASA does on missions.
On somebody's stuff, you might as well sub. Give them their due.
An artificial interstellar object could potentially be a parent craft that releases many small probes during its close passage as Earth. Operational construct not too dissimilar from NASA missions. What?
Huh?
And what is puberty?
Perfidy.
I've never heard of this.
I was talking about something else.
October 19th, 2017, they noticed a strange interstellar object and named it Oumuamua. What?
Oumuamua.
What? What?
Oh,
I'm
that's
so confused. This feels super not real.
Yeah.
And why is puberty one of the main sources here?
Yeah. Well,
I feel like this would be life-changing, world-changing news if we had just identified an actual artificial spacecraft in the cosmos. Why is it only being reported by fucking puberty? I guess Fox News and Yahoo Life taking it up. What is this? What is this Oumuamua?
Isn't that the same thing that's like the Black Knight that's supposed to be in orbit over Earth?
So is this real? I'm unfamiliar with the Pan-STARRS telescope. And Robert Warwick. Let's see, Canadian physicist and astronomer. Works at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And have his findings been verified by other sources, like peer-reviewed?
Taste this. I think it's okay, but taste it.
Oh, by 2019, most astronomers concluded
Oh,
it was
come on,
unnatural
Bobby.
context,
I didn't mean to
but
do
its
that.
exact characterization
Go on,
is
man,
contentious
go on.
given the limited
Go
observation
on, man.
data.
Go on.
Proposed explanations of its origin include remnant of disintegrated rogue
Yeah,
comet
yeah, it's
or a piece of an exoplanet rich in nitrogen,
Yeah.
ice, similar to Pluto. A number of astronomers have suggested that it could be
My
a
cousin.
product of extraterrestrial technology. However, there's insufficient
I'm
evidence to support
busy
any of these
right now, Bobby.
hypotheses, despite all of its strangeness. So it's still up for debate if it's actually artificial or natural. In January 2022, researchers proposed Project Lyra, where a spacecraft launched from Earth would catch up to Oumuamua in 26 years for closer studies. It's crazy that they can still track it and like chase it down. The Oumuamua thing is real, but it has nothing to do with the fake mothership shit. The mothership article is just saying things have come from outside the solar system before, like this asteroid. Lisa 2 gift subs Eye the Storm. Huh. Well, how odd. We weren't able to silence Puberty nor Fox News, I guess. Scroll down to an artist rendering of Oumuamua. Thanks for your sub, Kirby. On the Wikipedia. This floating piece of shit. This actually looks like when I made that Maya video of the mystery shit that I took. That actually looks like exactly what I made in Maya when I made the 3D model of the shit that I took. Yeah, I mean, if this is even remotely similar to what they saw, I would.
I thought this was going to be
Be
something.
inclined to think that it's one of these more natural
I
explanations.
thought this was going to be something more.
Because I feel like any kind of artificial spacecraft that would be passing by Earth would look unreal, like almost incomprehensible. Meanwhile, I can make out exactly what that looks like, and that looks like a giant fucking elongated rock of trash. The guy from the Pentagon are saying it's a possibility, it's a mothership, and could be. That'd be great. I would love if it is. That would be amazing news. Is the resub Mikoshi? Can't wait for the probing. The number one, what's wild now? If it is actually a mothership and it's confirmed, the number one thing I care to see is Twitter's response to it. People fight about everything. I imagine they'd immediately start trying to, like, politically align it, like, somehow. Like, I bet those fucking mothership aliens out there are woke liberals because it's the mothership.
I'll rewatch one fucking
Some
spoon
dumb
and fork.
shit. They'd be like the most unhinged arguments of all time.
I'm gonna
Oh yeah,
smoke a
I
cigarette
tried
anyway, see if it's still warm out.
Made contact. Absolutely. Is the Bitska-chow. It's happened 6 years ago. Well, this isn't what we're talking about. This is today. The mothership. The reason we ended up there is because they were talking about Oumuamua.
I mean, just
But the
set
mothership is
your
totally
fucking
separate from,
timer
I
for
guess,
like every 20
Fox
minutes.
News, Puberty, and the Pentagon. Check out Secure Team 10. They did a video on this thing ages ago. You talking about this? Because this is hours ago, so I can't imagine. So I guess you're talking about this thing. Yeah, I never heard of that. That's news to me. Do you think if we ever encounter extraterrestrials, it would be evil or friendly? I don't think it would be either. I think it'd be just entirely fucking neutral on it. Like, they probably wouldn't want anything to do with us because there's nothing to be gained. All that opens you up to is a lot of problems. Like, if we found an alien race, I imagine the number one thing we do is leave it the fuck alone. There's so many unknown variables there. It could be disastrous. Disease. Again, there's an unreal amount of problems, yeah. Disease, they could be carrying these crazy space pathogens that instantly just fucking kill us, like, all kinds of things. Significantly more technologically advanced, so they just absolutely fuck our shit, like, so many things. I don't think we'd touch them. We might try and observe them, but I don't think we'd ever try and make, like, direct contact unless we had 100% confirmed intel that they're nice, very friendly. But anything shy of that, which I don't think would ever come, it would just be at most observation. But you have to think also, if there's resources they want and we can get it, why not enslave the human race to get them? Well, they wouldn't enslave us, they'd just wipe us out. It'd be significantly easier. There'd be no reason to keep us alive. If they just wanted our resources, we're in the way. Enslaving us would just be a hassle. You can literally make elements once you have a fusion reactor, which we're near getting. Well, it's news to me. I don't know we're near getting it. They'd have literally zero reason to want our resources. Yeah, I mean, obviously. Everything we're discussing here is like the most sci-fi hypothetical shit ever. I don't see a reason they'd want our resources. The only thing they might want, if I had to put myself in an alien advanced civilization's brain that's somehow able to travel light years to get here, the only thing they might want is our real estate. Like, they might just want Earth itself. Like, if they need a different planet to, like, house themselves on, or if they need, like, a prison planet or something for their outlaws, whatever, that would be the only thing that would make sense. I don't see why they'd want, like, our water or anything else on our planet, because to get here, they would probably already have ways of generating that shit on their own anyway. You're assuming the aliens rely on the same things humans do. Yeah, and they very well could not. I think if there are aliens that are somehow even remotely close to us, we wouldn't even be able to process them.
All right.
It would be incomprehensible to our feeble little minds. That kind of species is just currently unimaginable.
Yeah, we would be absolutely, and we would be whipping ourselves to shreds right now.
Streams. It's been a crazy year for alien shit. All of the UFOs, now this alleged mothership that the Pentagon's eyeballing or whatever. Yeah, it's been a crazy year for alien shit. Like the prime sax. Strangely after the Queen's death, by the way. True. Perhaps she was the one keeping us protected. She signed a treaty a long time ago that was null and void upon her death.
Sometimes that happens. So long as you reign, madam, we will not destroy the world.
Prime Legend, Fister, and Resub Sapphire.
She's like, well, not my problem anymore after that, then.
Resub Crowley, Jiggly, and the Bits Swavey. Do you believe the aliens built the pyramids? No. I think there is a ton of information to elaborate on how the pyramids were built. These are prime land. So no. I don't think we have ever been visited by aliens. But I think it would be great if we did. What would you send into space in the hopes that aliens would see it? A Moist Esports contract. See if they'd be interested in signing with our org. That'd be such a huge foothold in the market. Why are you having a schizophrenic episode, Beef? Exactly what the government wants is brainwashing for streamers to talk about it. What? God? Right now, I would love for you to find me any other streamer talking about fucking aliens and asking them to join their esports team. What are you? You are having an episode of psychosis. This is all to get people to forget about the Epstein list. But Charlie doesn't care about that. He's so brainwashed. He forgot about the Epstein list because of the alien distraction. You need help. So when you watch a movie, do you think it's a distraction to prevent you from thinking about the Epstein list? Is everything in your life that doesn't revolve around the Epstein list a distraction to keep your mind off of the Epstein list? Maybe, Schnazzle, that would be kind of cool. Must have missed something. How did this relate to the Epstein list? It didn't. I don't know what the fuck that guy's on. Thanks, Resub GS. I have no idea. I have no fucking clue. The Epstein list is still right there. It's only a single Google search away. It's all right there. It hasn't been buried. These are the bits, ka-chow. No, I think it'd be a cool conversation with aliens, though. A ship.
All right, so they did say, even if this is complete bullshit, let's entertain it for a second, since this is our job. And hold on, while we do this real quick, let me put some music on. Alright, so they said they have a reason to believe an alien mothership is in our solar system, which is if we think about how large our solar system really is, and how it's an endeavor to get to the moon or send a probe to Mars or anything farther. Yeah, there could be one there. And ready to explore Earth. Well, we are one of those. Like if you're in the vast depths of space and you're looking for any port in a storm, and you find like a rock that has water, or like your ship sensors like actually recognize, like, hey, you can use this stuff. Yeah, you're gonna come by, whiz by, see a whole bunch of motherfucking like absolute warhounds just trying to annihilate each other on a daily basis, and you're like, there's a gas station down the road. Maybe we come back and we just steal some resources and be on our way. I don't know. So, okay. Last week, officials stated that these supposed alien aircrafts could send small probes to our planet in order to study it, similar to how NASA does on missions. Who was this written by? The director of the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, and Abraham Loeb, chairman of Harvard's University Astronomy Department, shared their findings on March 7th. Object could potentially be parent craft of so alright.
It would go so hard to talk to them about esports.
Yeah. Okay, so on to the next one. This is by Mythical Films, and we are let's do that. Private. Let's take it back to the.
I slept like 5 hours a day. I slept from like 9 up to 1:30.
Okay. So. Let's take this back. Warning, this is a privately issued government test program. Do not share this or copy it to your next device. Being hood test. Start.
You will be shown audio and images and be asked to rank them on a scale of 1 to 5, based on how disturbing they are using the buttons in your package. We will use these results to determine whether or not you are a human, robot, or if you are alive at all. Please connect headphones to the MP3 player that came with the projector and program file, and turn off the light. We will now begin the auditory part of this examination. Please ensure the headphones are plugged in correctly. We will begin shortly. Be ready.
One. Hmm. One. 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 Gomi's like, what the fuck? You are safe. That's definitely a one. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of opera, but it's a one. Like a 3. 4. 4. 5. 5. That's 5. That's creeping out on 6. And that sounds like a hunting crow or no. What the fuck?
No bullshit.
That's right to a 5. Yeah. Yeah, it's not good stuff. That's a 5. That's still a 5. That's
Soldier.
But she had both of worse for me. She had cancer.
do not to remove the headphones. Nothing is coming for you. The sound will be played now.
I'm just being imaginative. You know what I mean? That's just unmanageable. Yeah, I'm gonna fix that.
That's still at like a 3.5 to 4. It's like actually that might be help or a code or something like that. Like a 3.
Apparently, it didn't go to the major organ. Right?
No, the voice will not come for
I
you.
warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
He wasn't lying. Yeah. This guy's got he's got an ongoing ARG going on, I think.
In the next few minutes, you will be shown multiple images.
Lovely.
These images will not move, and they are not real. The first image will be shown shortly.
Yeah. You're not in danger. Eh. Really? Yeah, that's a 5. That's crazy. That's scary. Nothing's inside your home. What? I don't take that one as a very disturbing.
Congratulations. You have completed the test. Your results will be shown soon. We hope you enjoyed. Please wait while your results are being calculated.
The subject result, deceased. The subject is not alive and their brain has been corrupted by an external force. They are not safe from psychological attack. Mental aliveness rating, 0.7%. Really? Oh my. So it's to take care of the those false entities, or the copies, or the ones trying to make their way over from the other side or something. I think something. Yeah, I've seen similar things. Hello. Okay, on to this is Diablo 4. It's official. The dev team confirmed big features, dungeon woes, and class changes. Open world games.
Alright, so welcome back to Sanctuary. Yes, we've got some official new updates straight from the Diablo 4 dev team. So who wants to see more expanded Butcher-type enemies in Diablo 4? Well, the dev team had some very cool teases about that today, as well as how the Sorcerer, Druid, and other classes will be evolving past the beta. Yeah, we got a very detailed response about the biggest worries from the beta, which include the lackluster dungeon design and how dungeons will differ in the full game. And later in the video, we'll discuss why couch co-op isn't on PC, but the question is, will it ever come to PC? Also, smack that like button to buff by Barbarian. And check out the pinned comments for my PS5, Xbox Series X, and Nintendo Switch giveaway for my subscribers, so check that out. Alright, time to get into the details. The new interview of Diablo's general manager Rod Ferguson and Diablo 4's game director Joe Shelley. So here is the first question. It says this: one other bit of feedback I saw, and this came from a few people, was they're not being overly enamored with the dungeon design. It just seemed to be that dungeons were too big and involved backtracking to grab keys and unlock doors and so on. Is this something you've seen, and are you taking a look at it? Now, let's get into the actual response from Joe Shelley, first of all, who goes on to say this: we have seen it, yeah, there's a few elements there. There's some players who we added the ability to teleport out of dungeons via the UI, and some players don't realize that exists. But certainly, there are cases within the dungeon where you're going to get a key and then you're going somewhere else. Yeah, you know, what I'm curious about is why there was no tutorial structure telling you and indicating that, hey, you can quickly exit the dungeon, if you guys don't know this, by opening up the map, going to the entrance location on your map, clicking on it, and then you can actually just instantly transport out of the dungeon. That would have been nice to know at the beginning, so they definitely need a tutorial key for that. Also, we have this right here, but when you think about dungeons overall, there are well over 100 dungeons in the game, and in the beta, of course, you're only seeing, the dungeons that exist in the Fractured Peaks region, which is about 20% of the overworld. One of the design decisions we made is we wanted the dungeons, an individual dungeon, to have certain properties about it that were consistent and tied to that dungeon and that place in the world. So that when you go into a dungeon, it's not drawing out of a raffle of all the elements. There are some things that are consistent. And he's talking about, of course, each region looking unique. However, the problem is, from the complaints that I'm seeing, despite the fact that we're in Fractured Peak, although it has a very specific look to it, tone to Fractured Peaks, it's the actual layout that is redundant and the problem, and the backtracking that's the issue. Furthermore, we have this right here, and the way that we want players to approach that as they're leveling up is look at it as, I want to do each of these different dungeons, and that's incentivized through things like the Codex of Power and the Renown system that give you a sort of checklist for all the dungeons you can do. And then when you get into the in-game, after you've completed the campaign and you get access to the Nightmare Dungeon system, we have the sigils that modify dungeons in really cool ways with buffs and nerfs. Those dramatically modify the dungeon, but because the dungeons are designed with some properties to start with, you can get a sigil for a dungeon and have some context for what that means. It's not just a random name that can be anything. Okay, I get it. You know, it's going to be cool that the enemies will change up here dependent on the sigil that you get. And of course, it would mutate the boss, I suppose you would say. But again, it would be neat if those sigils would actually change the layout of the dungeon itself and evolve the layout or randomize it in some weird way. They are not giving any indication that the sigil actually does that. So again, they're not really responding as to the exact concern that we have. Ron Ferguson says this: people are seeing dungeons at the baseline level. It'll be interesting the feedback once people get to experience what it means to go through sigils and get to see now there's more monsters, now they have a different ability, now you're being buffed this way and they're being buffed that way, and it's going to feel like a much different experience. Which, again, that sounds neat, but yeah, I want to hear about the actual layout, and I want to hear a solution as to backtracking through these dungeons. So this is very much, in my opinion,
straight bullshit
to the problems and concerns that we have from the beta. Now, we have this right here. I've seen people say the game is easier as a sorcerer with ranged abilities than it is as a barbarian who has to fight up close, and the rogue is somewhere in between. I've had a go at all the classes, and I tend to agree. Oh, and the feedback is coming from people who have somehow taken all 3 currently available classes to level 25. I wondered if everything is working as intended, or if you're looking at it again with an eye to potentially rebalancing it. Great question right there, as we are playing as the rogue. All right, this gameplay, by the way, comes from my twin bro, Ryan. So thank you, Ryan, for the gameplay. This is awesome to see. All right, so Joe Shelley says this: whenever we make changes to the game, it affects the balance, so balance is a continual progression. And in particular, this beta, in addition to the technical aspects that Rod was talking about, is an opportunity for us to look at balance in the wild and make improvements. So certainly there are things like Hammer of the Ancients, it's a little bit underpowered, and Frost Sorcerers are pretty strong. Arclash is a little weak right now. There's a few things like that. So yeah, they're going to have a wide assortment, a wide list of things that they will be patching up here in the future. Or patching down, depending on if they're nerfing or buffing. But anyway, here we go. It says, but in general, there are no classes that are only for the really skilled people. When you see that campfire lineup, it's not just mechanics that you're choosing, it's also the class fantasy. So, if you have, for example, a fantasy of being a rogue, we don't want you to pick rogue because you think that character looks really cool, and then for us to come back and say, oh, no, that's only for people who have 60 hours of Diablo. So it sounds like they want these characters to be playable no matter what your skill is. Check it out. It says, you're not good enough. We absolutely don't want that to be the case. So again, that's kind of what my theory was in my previous video, was that they were kind of designing the game for all skill ranges, trying to make it as user-friendly as possible, I suppose you would say. But I guess some people want more depth to some of these systems. However, balance is an entirely different discussion when it comes to this sort of thing. And it's just when you are in a cooperative environment, especially, you don't want some sorcerer just absolutely dominating the entire field when the barbarian is being held back and not doing much. That is just not fun. So that's where I think the big problem is with the current balance. Now, it says this. The way that we approach it is that we make sure that for each class there are builds that are accessible for players, and then there are builds or styles of play. And you mentioned the rogue, the melee rogue. It's more challenging to play than a ranged rogue, for example. And within the melee rogue, you can get into like, all right, well, I want to build where I shadow dash through an enemy, and I blade twist, and I try to get the blades to go through as many enemies as possible. There's a lot of opportunity for high skill gap there. Certainly a rogue, a melee rogue, presents lots of additional opportunities because it is more dodge-based class, expecting
type
more
cracker I've never had before.
They expect players to
called egg crackers
play in this way, and it's considered more difficult. I think they may actually need to consider also, I don't know,
chickens in the oven, so I'm kind of
for this class,
trying to
into that a little bit more. I don't know if there's going to have
stave
to
off of,
in this way. I myself have not had the chance to really dive into the rogue as much as I want. So yeah, I cannot wait to do that. Hopefully in the open beta period. Now we have this right here, but our overarching goal is that players can embrace the fantasy of it, and then they can lean into the playstyle that they want, or if they want a higher skill gap, they can lean into that. Now, when we talk about playstyles, one thing that I personally noticed when I was playing actually as a barbarian is that I was trying my own playstyle, and I thought I was super powerful. Then I got to this certain boss. Then I realized, wow, I have to respect my character to adjust, and I was kind of forced, honestly, into a bleed build to even beat this boss, which is a bit concerning because it seems like there is like this ultimate build for the class beyond your play style, so it kind of interrupts your intended play style, and I think that is a little worrying. I'm hoping that you can have several different play styles within one class that can actually be extremely
So let's address that, because that's something that I felt during Diablo 3. So I used the Witch Doctor build, and while you could do Witch Doctor builds that were viable and probably worked late game, by and large, at least when I played, it was not a class that typically went for endgame or was considered. I might be wrong, but when I was playing, I felt a little bit discouraged because overall the Witch Doctor was underpowered, especially with the kinds of things that you can do, and I really liked playing as the Witch Doctor. I don't know. And the story, I know that most people consider the story secondary, but there is, like, I remember the original game, you got a booklet that actually came with the story, and you really got into it, and there was all this artwork and everything, and it really felt like a little paperback Necronomicon type thing that you were looking at, and it was really cool. And then Diablo 2 came along, and it was just this expanded world where everything was even more blood-soaked and mystical, and you know, just so much to explore and to experience with that game. And then just took a hard nosedive at some point, and so I was not pleased with what's her name turning into Diablo in the end. I was not pleased with the witch from the first game coming back and fucking having fucking coupled with motherfucking Diablo or something to fucking break. You could have just fucking come up with a new fucking story. Like, you could have not copied and pasted the first fucking two stories again. And what do I see in new Diablo 4? Again, the fucking butcher. I mean, nothing else. There's no other theme in hell. I mean, call lazy where I sees it. I already see it in this, man. Like, this is a flagship title. Like, really, guys, Blizzard, please, please, please. If you can't fucking find it in yourself to fucking like to really put your soul into this title, then I mean, I don't know. Find somebody else that will. Find a team that will. Find a team that really wants to do a Diablo game. And let's see what they do with it. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. This is just sometimes I get real worried about Diablo 4.
Powerful win compared to one another.
Last story
so
was
that's
fucking
my hope.
bullshit.
We'll have to see if that ends up being true. But right now, there's a lot to be desired on that front, at least in my opinion. Now, Rod says this. The thing that can't be overlooked either is you're only getting to play the first 25 levels, and the classes don't stay balanced with each level change. The Barbarian is a really great example because the Barbarian has the most weapons of any character, and because of that, they have the most equipment slots of any character, which means they could have the most legendary effects. So once you get all legendaries, the Barbarian can be super strong because it's got two, legendary effects with other characters. Don't have to, but you're not going to get legendaries until
we're going to play XO1 here in a little bit.
Yeah, the Barbarians are the weaker of the classes, especially
instead of doing the weird history at the end. We're gonna do.
Furthermore, it says same
we're gonna
thing
finish this, and we're gonna do weird history, and then we'll go into XO1. That'll be the end of the night, and the end cap for the stream.
So you're going to play to 25 levels without
I think some really nice visuals would do well.
Spirits, which is really
Tomorrow's the start of my new work week.
Like. That's wow. For me personally, like considering that this is a demo and kind of like a representation of the game, for them to miss such a critical feature of the Druid, that's kind of gonna be, I don't know if people will tap into how strange the balancing will feel. Maybe they'll, I hope they don't cancel their pre-order just assuming, oh, that's it for the Druid, you know. So it's kind of strange that they don't at least let you test that out in the beta to say, hey, this is a little bit more of what we're going to be offering with the Druid. In fact, I think it would be wise for them to have some sort of video preview as to what you could potentially expect next, as an example for the Druid, so people aren't kind of caught off guard like that's it, you know what I mean? So I hope there's not that type of reaction with this one. All right, furthermore, we have, so the notion of, yes, there are individual skills that need tweaking. There's also this notion about they can come into their own over a period of time. So to say, oh, it's much harder as a barbarian in the lower levels is true. But when you're level 40 as a barbarian, you might be one of the strongest classes because of the additional 200 aspects, legendary effects you can have. Yeah, so now I'm a little bit worried about balancing in co-op. I think that's where it's going to be really noticeable, some of these issues that pop up with certain characters being weaker at certain levels than the other characters, then finally coming into their own. So to me, it sounds like the Barbarian is just going to have a little bit more of a rougher time, especially at the beginning of the game. I'm hoping that that is not true as we head into the in-game and that they are more level playing field with the rest of the classes. But, yeah, I don't know. I think that it's always going to be where someone is just going to be so OP when you're playing with other people, especially when we're talking about ranged characters like the Sorcerer. Unless they decide to nerf, we'll see. This one right here, so something I was delighted to hear about and had no idea about until I came into work this morning and read about it, is the Butcher. Quick explainer, the Butcher
surprise
was
ambusher in
dungeons.
dungeons.
1, and now he's in Diablo 4 as a surprise ambusher in dungeons.
Okay, I mean, that's
shows
cool.
Up seemingly at random and then disappears after a certain amount of time, and by all accounts, is as ferocious as he always was. Yes.
Cool. Instead of a set piece is a random encounter. Okay, that's kind of cool.
So freaking fast. Now, Joe Shelley says this. First off, we really like the way that some monsters can change the player's gameplay priorities. If you look at the Treasure Goblin, quick explainer, the Treasure Goblin appears at random as well, and you have to kill it.
That's from Diablo Immortal.
Yeah.
That was cool. I didn't mind chasing out the loot goblins.
I like that gameplay change. Furthermore, they say this. One of the things that can be really fun is changing up the player's goals at any given moment. And the Treasure Goblin Does that by running off with a pile of loot that you want, so you're likely off into the extra danger to get it. And the Butcher does that by ambushing you and creating a situation where you're likely to run and potentially run into other danger or navigate under pressure. So broadly speaking, in Diablo 4, we're looking for other ways to add that kind of gameplay.
I mean, I would give us a reason to fucking like travel like with other players too, or be extra prepared before we wander into some areas.
Redemption 2, which had excellent random encounters, or even Ghost of Tsushima, where you just run into some sort of
one of the highs of Diablo 2 was
now this stuff doesn't really matter.
Was like navigating through the dungeon. Everything was under the fog of war, like, you know, the covered until you actually went and explored it. You didn't know what the fuck was coming on the other side, and then all of a sudden a pop would come up, and it would be a legendary glowing in the motherfucking next chamber, and be like, oh my god, this is gonna be good. And then you see all his ads around him, and they're all like got chain lightning or motherfucking like they're all poisoned or fucking, oh man, yeah.
So yeah, curious to see what they do with it. Alrighty then, so what's next? So check this out right here. It goes on to say this: it makes me wonder what people's expectations should be about queuing when the game comes out. Is there an expectation that queues will be a thing we have to deal with to some degree? Great question, and the response is this one right here. Of course, the ideal is that there are no queues. That is where we want to be. Basically, what we're having today in the beta is what we'd like to have for launch. You go in, there's no queue, you go. And you know, one way to actually stop worrying about this is to have a button that says offline play. I still think that should be an option. I just don't get it, because even though...
Thank you very much, Magi1122, for following. Really appreciate it. You have a great night. Be safe.
We'll hop into the instances with world bosses, but again, that stuff can and should be able to be experienced offline in single player, in my opinion. Now, we have this right here. Sometimes queues are a part of how many servers are available and those sort of things, but the other side of queues, honestly, is around protecting the services. Sometimes you'll put a queue...
Hope everybody's got something to drink, something to eat, something to smoke tonight. My cousin just made some baked chicken, so I'm gonna when the 80's comes on Weird History, I'm gonna go and snag one real quick.
So it's not always just availability of space. Sometimes something's being investigated, or you're trying to manage pressure on one particular thing until you can reinforce it.
And I very much am trying to do things a little bit earlier in the evening when I can.
Furthermore, we have this
that way I get to bed a little bit earlier as well.
What happened? We actually turned up the queues a little bit to protect this wall. We were working.
Don't have to take the trash out tonight.
We'll be able to start dialing it up, and the queue was...
I'm responsible for the trash now, so at least the can, like, you know, like the weekly stuff.
That they have done a good job limiting the queue amount, and at the end of the beta, I was definitely getting into the game pretty much instantly, but again, despite that, lag was definitely an issue. Disconnect is. Furthermore, we have this right here. So I was looking on the Diablo subreddit to see people's general reactions, because that's a good gathering place for them. And one note I saw mentioned couch co-op and how it was a console-only feature. Firstly, is that right? And the confirmation is yes, that is right. And I don't know if it bothers you or not that couch co-op isn't on PC, but it would be a nice feature to have on PC for sure. So let's get into it more. This person then wrote an impassioned post about couch co-op, and the salient point seemed to be that why was a series that originated on PC now lacking an additional feature that consoles did? Yeah, great question. Rod Ferguson responded, "It's a technology question. Trying to do shared screen co-op on PC is much more challenging when it comes to account management and how you play together." Does it sound like an excuse? Let me know. Furthermore, Rod says this in response to why. How's it different from console? Well, console is a pre-setup for that in terms of the ways you can associate the accounts to it. Furthermore, follow-up question, because those systems allow multiple users to be signed in, and Rod confirms exactly, whereas trying to get two Battle.net accounts signed into the same PC at the same time is a technology problem. And the notion of two people sitting together at a desk, when you prioritize the problems you have to solve, solving for two people sitting at a desk playing on the same PC is a lower priority than the majority of couch co-op is going to happen. It's going to be in front of a 65 TV. And there's no doubt that that is what co-op really does originate kind of from console. But again, with that being said, it sure would be nice to have that option of being able to have couch co-op. Or I guess we're saying
and I say to that,
on PC with, of course, Diablo 4. I don't know. I just wouldn't hold your breath.
I say to that you can cast from your computer to any monitor. So I don't know. Like it seems like you should be bridging all forms of technology to be able to work with each other. There's absolutely no reason you shouldn't be able to take your controller and go to anywhere in the house and be able to do what you need to do. I'm just saying.
For this feature to make its way in Diablo 4, honestly. So there it is, the latest happenings around Diablo 4, some interesting things going on. I'm kind of curious to see what happens with the classes after we reach level 25 and get some of those special additions that they were talking about here to the Sorcerer, Druid, and, Barbarian. I'm mostly curious about the Barbarian. I myself really enjoyed playing as the Barbarian class. But again, I have to definitely respect. I could not go with what I was trying to go with in terms of play style. So I'm hoping that there's several different play styles that are equally as powerful for each class. We'll see. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay tuned for more. Remember, check out that description down below, or the pinned comment, I should say, down below for that PS5, Xbox Series X, and Nintendo Switch giveaway for my subscribers, and I will see you all next time. Take care.
Yes, sir.
All right, so
okay, and
About the same year, 2005, 2004.
Mm-hmm.
1988, a year when you could feel America was becoming more materialistic. It was out with the old.
Tell him, Ray. Teamwork sucks.
And in with the new.
Are those Bugle Boy jeans that you're wearing?
Yes. They are Bugle Boy jeans.
Would this turning point be for the worse, or would people see through all of this?
What's your problem?
Today, we're going to talk about the news, culture, sports and entertainment, and all that was weird in the 80s. This is Timeline. Today, we're going double eights with 1988. But before we set sail, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel and let us know in the comments below what story from 1988 you would like a full video on. Now, in 1988, we have one thing to say to you.
You are next.
This is 1988.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Before the hangover of New Year's Eve even wore off, the Ashland Oil Company accidentally dumped nearly 1 million gallons of diesel oil into the Monongahela River in Pennsylvania on January 2nd. According to reports, the company's 4 million gallon tank began leaking on its first use due to a dime-sized flaw in its fabrication. Within hours, the oil made its way into the Ohio River, contaminating drinking water for nearly 1 million Ohioans, West Virginians, and Pennsylvanians. Pretty bad. But nothing compared to the great Exxon Valdez oil spill of 1989, when Captain Joseph Hazelwood said, "Hold my beer," and dumped 10.8 million gallons of oil onto the shores of Alaska. But we'll save the rest of that story for our next year. 9 days later, and a couple of states over in Michigan, on January 11th, America's first test tube quintuplets were born. 4 girls and 1 boy to 34-year-old Michelle L'Esperance, a social worker and former model. Fast forward to January 2009, when Southern California's Natalie Suleiman would put Les Ferrance and Jacobson to shame by giving birth to 8, count 'em 8, IVF babies and transmogrifying into Octomom. In mid-January, sports commentator Jimmy the Greek Snyder was fired by CBS, where he was a weekly commentator on the NFL Today for 12 seasons, after voicing these comments.
If they take over coaching like everybody wants them to, there's not going to be anything left for the white people. I mean, all the players are black. I mean, the only thing that the whites control is the coaching jobs.
Jimmy.
You don't know diddly.
13-day standoff between a small group of Mormon polygamists and Utah police came to an end on January 28th in a bloody shootout. The standoff began when the fundamentalist group, led by Adam Swap and his mother-in-law, Vicky Singer, bombed a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints chapel in Marion, Utah. Swap and Singer hoped the bombing would lead to the resurrection of John Singer, Swap's father-in-law and Vicky Singer's husband. Instead, roughly 150 cops and FBI agents surrounded the Singer compound for nearly 2 weeks. After 2 armored vehicles stormed the Singer compound, Swap surrendered by waving a white towel drenched in blood. If you're fascinated by armed standoffs led by charismatic cult leaders, wait till we get to the 90s. The following month, on February 12th, while the Cold War was still being waged, the Soviet Union deliberately steered one of their Navy warships into an American warship, the USS Yorktown, after the U.S. was caught passing through Soviet territorial waters in the Black Sea. Technically, the USS Yorktown was in Soviet waters, but it claimed the right of innocent passage. Due to a misinterpretation of the innocent passage laws on both sides, the Soviets sideswiped the trespassers anyway, causing the Americans to redirect their course away from the Black Sea. In the end, both ships floated off in their own directions with minor damage and no casualties on either side. Turning to sports, we go to Calgary, Canada, where the 1988 Winter Olympics opened on February 13th. The games were notable for 3 things. 1. The debut of the Jamaican national bobsled team, which would later be immortalized in 1993's Cool Runnings, starring the late, great John Candy. 2. British underdog ski jumper Eddie the Eagle Edwards. And 3. After 56 years, curling made a comeback. Jimmy Swaggart, the television excessively perspiring evangelist, admitted to getting it on with roadside prostitute Miss Deborah Murphy in Louisiana.
I have sinned against you, my Lord.
You'd think the sins of the flesh would have been a teaching moment for the sweaty Swaggart. But sadly, 3 years later, on October 11th, 1991, Swaggart was caught with another lady of the night, this time near Palm Springs, California. Swaggart told his new congregation at the Family Worship Center,
I'm not going to tell you everything, because the Lord told me it's flat none of your business.
Oh, well, Jimmy said that the Lord said that it's not our business. Let's move on, everybody. Sorry, Jimmy. Speaking of religion,
do as I say, not as I do.
3 days later, Larry Flint won the landmark case of Hustler Magazine Inc. versus Falwell. It all started when Jerry Falwell Sr. sued Flint for libel, invasion of privacy, and intentional infliction of emotional distress after Hustler ran a mock Campari liquor ad portraying the evangelist in an incestuous hookup with his mother in an outhouse.
We identified at the bottom of the page that it was an ad parody and that it was not to be taken serious.
DC Follies every Saturday does a TV show on ABC. Saturday Night Live does a TV show. Those political skits permitted to come in court and sue for intentional infliction of emotional stress?
Well played, Hustler. The U.S. Supreme Court, familiar with parody and satire, in an 8-0 ruling, gave the shutout victory to Flint. The 80s, that was some good stuff. When the March winds came blowing in, 3 people became substantially wealthier when the rear door of a Loomis armored truck swung open, dumping more than $1.5 million onto the busy streets of San Francisco. By the time the truck driver returned, a crowd of locals helped recover a little over $1 million, while the mysterious 3 made off with the 460 large. Man, what would you do? On March 12th, Rick Astley's single, Never Gonna Give You Up, finally reached the #1 spot on Billboard's Hot 100 chart after spending 9 months on the top of the charts everywhere else in the world. It was 2007.
It's good sauce.
Some little shit stir started rickrolling people in various 4chan message boards with a video of the song, and a pop star was reborn. By the fall of 2008, we reached...
It's what happens when you let me taste the sauce instead of trying it.
With the blue-eyed soul singer rickrolled the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Back to 1988. On March 13th, John Holmes, star of at least 573 adult movies, who worked under the aliases Johnny Wad, Big John
Dirty
Fallis,
motherfucker.
and Long John, died at the age of 43 due to complications from AIDS. 2 years earlier, Holmes had been diagnosed HIV positive, although that didn't stop his adult film career. He made several more features, including The Rise of the Roman Empress and The Devil in Mr. Holmes.
How many
failing
people
to
did he
inform the
fucking
cast and
infect
crew
with
of his
AIDS?
illness. Holmes spent the last 5 months of his life in a Los Angeles VA hospital, even being interrogated by LAPD detectives about the Wonderland murders of July 1981.
Are you? Help them, please.
Sure.
Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice.
You gotta help.
Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice.
It's showtime.
During the NFL's offseason, Herschel Walker, then a running back for the Dallas Cowboys, made his debut as a professional ballet dancer with the Fort Worth Ballet Company on April 10th. Well, Walker didn't really dance as much as he kind of just stood on stage. But it wasn't bad for a 220-pound running back who only took an intro to ballet course as a freshman at the University of Georgia. 2 days later, the United States Patent and Trademark Office issued Harvard the first patent ever for the genetic engineering of an animal. In this case, it was for a mouse. The eggs of Harvard's female mice were injected with an isolated cancer gene, which would then serve as baseline models for cancer research. Nearly 23 years after he and his then-wife, Cher, took I Got You Babe to #1, Sonny Bono won the 7-candidate race and became the mayor of Palm Springs, California on April 12th. At the same time, nearly 360 miles up the Pacific coast, Clint Eastwood had finished up his 2-year stint as the mayor of his hometown of Carmel, California. On the same day, Soviet officials flatly denied the allegations of anything having to do with the mysterious anthrax outbreak.
Good chicken, Bobby.
April 2nd, 1979, which was the world's worst anthrax outbreak within the last century. At the same time, Soviet officials claimed the disaster was caused by the consumption of bad meat, not in a covert Soviet military research lab near Sverdlovsk, Russia, where it really came from. Amidst their denial, it didn't help the Soviets' claim when biochemical engineers with the U.S. Threat Reduction Agency found several hundred tons of weaponized anthrax on the remote Vozrozhdeniye island in the Aral Sea. Is the world safe from the lab's leaked anthrax? No one's sure. But keep in mind that the anthrax found during the rash of United States Postal Service anthrax attacks in 2001 was from the original strain of anthrax the Soviets buried in 1979.
Yeah, see?
We go to the air, where the United States federal ban on smoking in airplanes began on Sunday, April 23rd.
Oh, the U.S. has
has
biological warfare labs, so
to
to counter the shit that
Staying with
y'all got
airlines,
over there
the
in China
passengers
and
of Aloha
Russia.
Airlines Flight 243 on April 28th
It's mostly
were hanging
defense
on for
research.
dear life when the roof of their Boeing 737 tore off at 24,000 feet over Honolulu, Hawaii.
There was an explosion, and it started with a hole in the ceiling of the aircraft.
Right next to my feet was just an exposed area, and I could see the ocean below me.
I heard an impact, looked up, and I saw that the plane was falling apart up in the front. Thought we were
Slava,
down.
Ukraine, by the way.
Pilot and everything, because from my angle, I only saw sky.
Although one flight attendant perished after being sucked out of the fuselage, all 95 passengers survived the 10 long minutes it took pilot Robert A. Schornsteimer to land the topless 737 safely. FAA officials later reported that the cause of the accident was wear and tear, topped off by shoddy inspections and maintenance. And that is why you should always keep your seatbelt fastened. Heading into May, we turn to the art world, where Jackson Pollock's 1955 painting Search sold for a cool $4.8 million. The piece was estimated to be painted within the last year of his life, a dark period for the artist who rarely created any work during the last 3 years of his life due to alcoholism and depression. But that wasn't even the most expensive painting sold in 1988. That honor would go to Pablo Picasso when his masterpiece sold for $38.5 million. That's $83.3 million adjusted for inflation. On the same day, we turn to sports. Former player turned Cincinnati Reds manager Pete Rose received a 30-day suspension after he was thrown out of a game for bumping first base umpire Dave Pallone. Irate hometown fans threw radios, batteries, cigarette lighters, and maybe even some Skyline chili onto the field. It got so bad, Reds owner Marge Schott had to post a message onto Riverfront Stadium's electronic billboard asking fans to stop throwing crap. The following day, White House officials denied that President Reagan had ever been influenced by astrology, but that may not apply to all the Reagans. White House spokesman Marlin Fitzwater threw First Lady Nancy Reagan under the bus, saying that she had consulted an astrologer on the president's travel and scheduling plans. Then, former White House Chief of Staff Donald Regan said Nancy regularly consulted an astrologer in pretty much every major decision, including when the president signed the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty at exactly 1:30 p.m. on December 8, 1987. Reagan, a total Aquarius. Later in the month, on May 14th, a school bus full of teens and their youth group leaders collided in a head-on collision on their way home from Kings Island Theme Park in Mason, Ohio. The accident happened as the church youth group was heading back home to Radcliffe, Kentucky, southbound on Interstate 71. Larry Wayne Mahoney drove his pickup truck northbound on the wrong side of the road and into the bus. 24 teens and 3 adults died in the collision. Mahoney lived. Upon inspection, local police found a cold 12-pack of Miller Lite in Mahoney's truck. Several family members of the victims of the crash became prominent leaders in Mothers Against Drunk Driving, including Carolyn Nunnally, who went on to become MAD's president. In slightly better news, the withdrawal of Soviet military forces from Afghanistan began on May 15th, more than 8 years after the USSR attempted to support their pro-communist, pro-Soviet government.
The next major turning point in the history of all civilization.
The publishers of Consumer Reports magazine submitted a petition to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration requesting that the agency ban the Suzuki Samurai. The petition was filed after the publication road tested the vehicle, calling it wholly unsuitable for consumer use due to its propensity to roll over during some fairly basic maneuvers at 40 miles an hour.
Don't sneeze, we'll roll over. Great movie.
Drink. I don't want the drink.
Also a great film.
I don't. I don't.
You do.
I do. I do. You don't. Listen, when I say I do, that means I do.
2 days later, Milli Vanilli dropped the single Girl You Know It's True on June 25th, which was also the title track off their American debut LP. The single flew up the charts, peaking at #1 on the German singles chart, #2 on the US Billboard Hot 100, and #3 on the UK singles chart. But what goes up must be lip synced. A year later, on July 21st, 1989, it all came crashing down for Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan, the lead of Milli Vanilli. In short, the hard drive of the device that was playing Girl You Know It's True malfunctioned, causing the song to skip and sending Rob and Fab backstage in embarrassment and fear. The National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences revoked Milli Vanilli's Grammy for Best New Artist, and people who bought the album and went to their concerts filed lawsuits. Eventually, Rob and Fab split, but not until after a desperate attempt to salvage their career in a spectacularly embarrassing press conference.
So we give this Grammy back now. Brad Howell and Sean Davis are the real singers, and I think they should get this Grammy.
We'll save Rob Pilatus' story for 1998. We turn to boxing, where Mike Tyson went toe-to-toe with Michael Spinks at the Atlantic City Convention Hall in New Jersey on June 27th. Both fighters were undefeated. It was billed as the mega fight for the ages. But 91 seconds after it began, Spinks went down for the second and final time as Tyson won the mega match by KO.
He leads to the right hand. Down he goes. I don't think you get up from this.
Here comes the greatest. Love of all inside of me. Yeah. Sexy chocolate.
Happy trails, Hans.
The end of July also marked the end of an era when America's last Playboy Club's doors closed for good. The chain of gentlemen's lounges began on February 29, 1960, when Hugh Hefner opened the first Playboy Club in downtown Chicago. From there, the chain peaked in the 70s, when there were 22 clubs around the world. But by 1986, the Playboy-owned clubs had all closed down. All that was left was a handful of franchise-owned locations scattered around the world. The one in Chicago was the last remaining sign of the swinging 60s in America. In more sad news, Well, for Canadians at least. It was announced on August 9th that the Great One, Wayne Gretzky, would be traded from the Edmonton Oilers to the Los Angeles Kings.
It would be beneficial for everyone involved to let me play with the Los Angeles Kings.
But after 9 years with Edmonton, it was actually Gretzky who wanted out of Canada. He had just married actress Janet Jones, and the couple were expecting their first child. While the Great One did move for Jones, and she definitely got crap for it in the press, there were also rumors that Gretzky left the Oilers after he found out management was shopping his contract around the NHL. 2 days later, a notable and infamous date, as Al-Qaeda was formed during a meeting on August 11th in Peshawar, Pakistan. The meeting was attended by Osama bin Laden, Ayman al-Zawahiri, and Syed Imam al-Sharif, aka Dr. Fadl, during the Soviet-Afghan War. Turning to music, in mid-August, Guns N' Roses issued Sweet Child of Mine as the third single off their debut album, Appetite for Destruction. The single immediately shot up the Billboard Hot 100 chart, becoming the band's only #1 U.S. single. The song was written while Slash and drummer Steven Adler were jamming in their West Hollywood apartment. Rhythm guitarist Izzy Stradlin and bassist Duff McKagan liked the riff Slash was noodling on, and they added their own parts to the song. What they didn't know was that Axl Rose was upstairs in his bedroom listening to the band jam.
Barbecue
By the
sauce.
following afternoon, Rose had completed
Baby
the lyrics
Ray's
to the
sweet
tune,
and spicy,
which were
I'm sorry.
inspired by his girlfriend at the time, Erin Everly, daughter of Don Everly, of the Everly Brothers. At the end of August, the South African Council of Churches headquarters in Johannesburg, South Africa, were bombed for harboring progressive anti-apartheid groups. The blast injured 19 people. It was discovered later that the then Minister of Law and Order put the hit out on the building after getting his orders directly from South Africa's state president, P.W. Botha. We go now to the Summer Olympics in Seoul, South Korea, where on September 19th, Greg Louganis won the gold medal in 3-meter springboard diving. But what everyone remembers was his preliminary dive.
His weight is too far back, consequently the dive goes straight up. There, you see, he takes that glancing blow to his head.
Despite his injury, Louganis would earn the highest single score of the qualifying round for his next dive. He then repeated the same dive during the finals, which earned him the gold. But what no one knew at the time was that Louganis had tested positive for HIV 6 months earlier, a substantial concern considering he bled in the pool after his preliminary dive. Continuing with the Olympics, Canadian sprinter Ben Johnson ran a world record-setting 9.79 seconds in the 100-meter dash. When stanozolol, a type of steroid, was found in Johnson's urine, the Olympic Committee yoinked his gold medal. The gold was then given to Carl Lewis, who incidentally also tested positive for banned substances, but nothing was ever said or done about it. One last Olympic story. On the final day of the
Can't have
Games
two
on October
embarrassments in a
2nd,
row. No, no,
American
no.
boxer Roy Jones Jr. properly peppered South Korea's Park Si-hun.
Yeah.
Despite outpunching
Jones should have
Si-hun
gotten that.
86-32, Jones lost the match, earning a silver medal, while Si-hun got the gold. To no one's surprise, several of the judges had been wined and dined by South Korean organizers. Before lifting Si-hun's arm, referee Aldo Leone turned his head to Jones and said, "I can't believe they're doing this to you." Switching to politics, on October 5th, during the United States vice presidential debate, Senator Dan Quayle teed himself to Senator Lloyd Bentsen when comparing himself to John F. Kennedy.
I have as much experience in the Congress as Jack Kennedy did when he sought the presidency.
Benson's retort,
Jack Kennedy was a friend of mine. Senator, you're no Jack Kennedy.
Not even a pale imitation.
Despite the burn, George H.W. Bush and Quayle would go on to win the White House nomination. That same day, Chile's president, Army General Augusto Pinochet, accepted his loss of the 1988 Chilean national plebiscite instead of extending his rule for another 8 years. The noes won with 56% of the vote, ending Pinochet's reign of power. But Pinochet wasn't going to go out with dignity. "I'm not leaving, no matter what," he reportedly told advisors. Instead, he demanded that he be given executive power to use the Chilean army to keep hold of power and the capital. General Fernando Mattei refused, saying there was no way in hell he'd ever do anything like that. Pinochet eventually backed off, and fast forward to March 11, 1990, when Chile ushered in Patricio Aylwin, who became the country's first president after 16 and a half years without democracy. It's mid-October. We go to Los Angeles. It's Game 1 of the World Series between the Oakland A's and the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's the bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, and the tying run on first. Dodger manager Tommy Lasorda pinch hits Kirk Gibson against the A's closer Dennis Eckersley. Suffering from 2 injured knees, Gibson hobbled to the plate. With a full count, we get this.
Fly ball into right field. She is gone!
The Dodgers went on to win. This was Gibson's one and only at bat, and we think he made the most of it.
Hey, Wall Street, don't panic.
I remember that one.
Only
I was.
touching your hands.
Remember that? I think it was
Moving
HBO.
into November, the Morris worm was unleashed onto the internet by Robert Tappan Morris, a grad student at Cornell University. It wasn't the first computer virus distributed through the internet, but it certainly got the most media attention.
How insidious was this virus?
Well, it spread very quickly.
There are reports in newspapers today that it has made its way to Europe and to Australia.
Morris's stunt also resulted in the first felony conviction in the United States under the new Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986. According to Morris, the worm wasn't written to hack computers. He created it to point out security flaws.
Because he used the extra parts to make his robot friend. Robot, roll call, camera, servo, gypsy, crow.
Moving into December, Benazir Bhutto was sworn in as the Prime Minister of Pakistan, a big deal considering she was the first female Prime Minister in a Muslim-majority country. At 35, she was also the youngest elected leader in the Islamic world, as well as the youngest female Prime Minister ever elected.
People of Pakistan have elected the Pakistan People's Party with the largest single majority in the entire country.
Flash forward to December 27, 2007, when Al-Qaeda ambushed her while she was out campaigning for the 2008 Pakistani general election. Bhutto was hit with gunfire twice, seconds before a suicide bomb was detonated, killing her and 23 other people.
Nuremberg, that's wonderful.
Oh, Frank, everyone should have a friend like you.
Singer Roy Orbison, best known for the songs Only the Lonely, Crying, and Oh Pretty Woman, died on December 6th. Orbison saw a resurgence in his career, teaming up with Tom Petty, George Harrison, Bob Dylan, and Jeff Lynne with the all-star group The Traveling Wilburys. After his death, when you watch the Wilburys video for End of the Line, Orbison is represented by a guitar in a rocking chair. The following day, President Reagan, President-elect George H.W. Bush, and Mikhail Gorbachev met on Governor's Island in New York for Reagan's last U.S.-Soviet summit. It was during this trip that Gorbachev gave a speech that many saw as the end to the Cold War. We go to the Netherlands, where on December 12th, cat burglars stole 3 Vincent van Gogh masterpieces from the Kruller-Müller Museum, including The Potato Eaters, one of my favorites. The paintings were recovered months later, when the thieves gave up on trying to get any ransom for them. Actually, 1988 was the year Van Gogh became the hot artist to rip off. Just months earlier, thieves had swiped vase with carnations from Amsterdam's Stedelijk Museum. All in all, 28 Van Gogh paintings have been stolen since 1988. Animal rights terrorists, the Animal Liberation Front, firebombed Harrods department store in London a little over a week later on December 20th. The blast happened on the 3rd floor at 9 p.m., causing minimal damage and no injuries. Dingles, another store owned by the Al-Fayed brothers in Plymouth, was hit much harder, suffering severe damage which would take years to rebuild. The following day, on December 21st, Pan Am Flight 103 departed on what was a regularly scheduled flight from Frankfurt, West Germany, to Detroit. After the Boeing 747 took off from a stop in London, a bomb exploded on board, killing all 243 passengers and 16 crew members. Debris and shrapnel took the lives of 11 more people on the ground.
It is even worse in daylight than it looked on television at night. Now you can see the full enormity of the damage and the extent of it, and the way in which there's pieces of aircraft and twisted metal scattered over a wide area, and the number of houses that are damaged.
Now called the Lockerbie bombing, targeting the flight was eventually attributed to Libya, with Gaddafi taking the blame and paying compensation to the families. And finally, the year ended with the Fog Bowl, when the Chicago Bears defeated the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC Divisional Playoff game. A fog rolled into Soldier Field during the second quarter, cutting the players' visibility to less than 20 yards. It was a sloppy game, but still one of the greatest worst weather games in NFL history. And that is how 1988 ended. 1989 was only hours away, a year where we would see one man standing up to oppression, the emergence of the kid, and learn it would be a long day living in Reseda. But that is for next year. Coming soon, 1989. So what do you think? What year in the 80s would you want to relive? Let us... 1989. Holy Toledo, we made it to the last timeline video of the 1980s.
Oh my God, this can't be happening to me.
While there were
Great movie.
twists and turns throughout the decade,
Be right back.
1989 stuck the landing. 89 would be remembered for the emergence of democracy and people from all over the world demanding freedom. As communism started to crumble, people started treating it like an unsightly facial mole.
Take this quarter, go downtown, and have a rap. Gnaw that thing off your face.
Today, we're going to talk about the news, culture, sports and entertainment, and all that was weird in the 80s. This is Timeline.
I'm in two tomorrow, Bobby.
So fine, because it is all about 1989. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel and let us know in the comments below what story from 1989 you would like a full video on. Also, stick around until the end when we'll reveal what decade timeline we'll be covering next. Now, are you ready for one last run at the 80s?
Captain, my captain.
This is 1989.
That's your edge.
5 minutes.
Pop culture got off to a good start in January. On the 3rd, the Arsenio Hall show debuted, which would give the world some unforgettable moments. From the dressing down of Vanilla Ice,
those that tried to hold the Ice Man down can kiss my wife, AFF. Yep.
to Magic Johnson divulging everything the day after the world found out he was HIV positive.
Having an HIV virus that I want everybody to practice safe sex.
And of course,
earlier I
Bill
saw
Clinton
Jim
as a
Carrey's
red-hot sax machine.
parody of Vanilla Ice, and that shit was ridiculously
Moving
awesome.
on to January 7th, when Hirohito, the Emperor of Japan, died. Hirohito was Japan's longest reigning emperor. He held the throne from 1926 to 1989, becoming a notable historical figure when he announced Japan's surrender to the Allied forces on August 12, 1945. On January 20th, George Herbert Walker Bush was sworn in as the 41st President of the United States. We're going to see a lot more HW action in the 90s. 3 days later, on January 23rd, the Spanish surrealist Salvador Dali died at the age of 84. While his death certificate says Dali died of heart failure, the last 5 years of the artist's life was rife with mental illness, depression, drug addiction, and Parkinson's-like symptoms.
Sign
But
up
Dali
to,
left an impression on the art world. In February of 2011, when Dali's...
So, I got an email from Google to sign up to try the BARD program, or the BARD experiment. Meet BARD, your creative and helpful collaborator, here to supercharge your imagination, boost your creativity, and bring your ideas to life. BARD is an experiment and may give you an inaccurate and appropriate responses. You can help make a BARD better by leaving feedback. Okay, yeah. So I actually enjoy talking with the AI chat program. So okay. That's I still have a conversation open with GPT chat or whatever. Okay. Added to the wait list. All right.
Hell yeah, brother. Hell yeah.
All right.
Portrait de Paul Eluard was won at a Sotheby's auction for a jaw-dropping $22.4 million, the most expensive of Dali's paintings sold, as well as the most expensive surrealist piece of art ever sold. Back to '89, Tone Loc released Loped After Dark, his debut album. The album reached #1 on the Billboard 200 chart, and by spring break, you couldn't turn on MTV without hearing Funky Cold Medina. Tone's second and final album, Cool Hand Loc, sorta tanked, but by then, his second career as an actor was just beginning. On February 4th, 1994, Tone got his first memorable role, playing the straight guy to Jim Carrey in Ace Ventura, Pet Detective.
This is not the time, Mace. If I ain't want to come down here and see me talking to you or your ass, I'm history.
Back to the '89 timeline. On January 24th, Ted Bundy was executed at Florida State Prison as hundreds of people just outside the prison walls chanted, sang, danced, and shot off fireworks.
This society deserves to be protected from me and from others like me, that's for sure.
Bundy confessed to 30 homicides, but considering he was giving investigators information on new victims up until his departure, the count is almost certainly higher.
Ted Bundy is dead.
Moving into February, the Ayatollah Khomeini ordered all brave Muslims to kill the British Indian writer Salman Rushdie for besmirching the Prophet Muhammad and other aspects of Islam in his 1988 novel, The Satanic Verses. Yep, Rushdie was issued a fatwa.
Sometimes they'll get sucked into the reels.
For a handful of years, until August 11th, 1993, when Rushdie made his first public appearance. Apparently, Bono had been calling for Salman from the stage throughout U2's Zoo TV tour. When the tour reached London's Wembley Stadium, Bono called out for Rushdie, and when the writer appeared, the stadium erupted. 1 week later, on February 21st, 54 members of the 14K Triad were arrested across the US, Canada, Singapore, and Hong Kong after 820 pounds of China narcotics were seized with a reported street value of $1 billion. In the mid-'80s, the Chinese-based gang, which dates
billion
made up
dollars.
3% of all US heroin sales. By '89, they controlled between 70 and 80% of the game. On February 23rd, Madonna's video for Like a Prayer debuted on MTV and was met with almost immediate backlash. Because of the video's controversy, Madonna lost her spokesperson gig with Pepsi, although she got to keep her $5 million fee, and Like a Prayer went on to #1 on 22 charts, including the Billboard Hot 100 and the UK singles. Everyone won, except Pepsi. Pepsi. Always the bridesmaid, the bride. We go to March, where on the 15th, the Bush administration announced that there would be an indefinite ban on the import of semi-automatic assault rifles. The ban, announced by William J. Bennett, the Director of National Drug Policy, was put into place after the U.S. Drug Enforcement Unit reported that they weren't able to keep up with the heavy artillery drug traffickers used. On March 24th, the Exxon Valdez drifted into Prince William Sound's Bligh Reef, just off the coast of Alaska, and spilled 10.8 million gallons of crude oil into the ocean. Captain Joseph Hazelwood was reported to have been drinking hard that night and was mysteriously missing when the tanker struck the reef. Exxon blamed Hazelwood, and he countered by saying Exxon was using him as a scapegoat. Hazelwood was cleared of all charges, but despite the evidence that pointed to Exxon's fault, the Exxon Valdez disaster will always be tied to the drunken skipper.
In the blink of a cosmic clock, I went from quantum physicist to Air Force test pilot. Here I am,
Quantum leap,
around in
hell
time,
yeah.
putting things right that once went wrong, a sort of time-traveling Lone Ranger with Al as my Tonto.
In late March, in the main courtyard of the Louvre, the glass pyramid made its official debut to, mixed results. Local Parisians hated the design of American architect I.M. Pei, saying it sullied the French Renaissance aesthetic of the Louvre. But just like they got over their hatred for the Eiffel Tower in March of 1889, yeah, they hated that too, Parisians eventually came to accept Pei's pyramids. And if you're a conspiracy enthusiast or a fan of the Da Vinci Code, you're familiar with the story of how the Big Pyramid is built with 666 glass panes. But that is a weird history for another time. Moving into early April, 19-year-old Seattle Mariner rookie Ken Griffey Jr. made his official Major League Baseball debut against the Oakland A's on opening day. The center fielder hit a double in his first Major League at-bat. The kid would go on to homer in his first home game swing at the Kingdome in Seattle 7 days later. We'll see much more of Junior in the 90s. Speaking of baseball,
Wild Thing delivers.
Forget about the curveball, Ricky. Give him a heater.
One last baseball story. On April 8th, Jim Abbott, a pitcher who only had one hand, made his Major League Baseball debut on April 8th when he faced the Seattle Mariners at Angel Stadium. Abbott got racked in his first game in the Bigs, giving up 6 runs and a 7-0 loss. But Angels fans still gave him a standing ovation as he was pulled from the game in the 5th inning. Flash forward to September 4th, 1993, when he was pitching for the Yankees and threw a no-hitter.
He did it! He did it! No-hitter for Jim Abbott!
Staying with sports, on April 15th, 96 people died and another 766 sustained serious injuries during an FA Cup semifinal between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest. With the match already in play, an estimated 5,000 supporters rushed to enter Hillsborough Stadium at once, most filling the sections directly behind the West goal. Then the crush began. Following the disaster, officials lied to the media, stating that the entire incident was due to football hooligans and widespread drunkenness by Liverpool supporters. The Taylor report found that the main cause of the disaster was due to the South Yorkshire Police Department's failure to control the crowd. 4 days later, on the 19th, Tricia Miley was found late at night in critical condition after being assaulted and left for dead in Central Park. Local detectives illegally interrogated dozens of suspects and then chose 5: Kevin Richardson, Anton McRae, Raymond Santana, Corey Wise, and Yusef Salam, who came to be known as the Central Park 5. Real estate developer Donald J. Trump took out full-page ads in New York City asking for the death penalty.
Of course I hate these people. And let's all hate these people, because maybe hate is what we need if we're going to get something done.
Despite a lack of physical evidence, the members of the Central Park 5 received 5 to 15 years in prison. Flash forward when Matthias Reyes confessed to the Central Park attack. And then flash forward again to 2014, when the Central Park 5 won a $41 million settlement after suing the city of New York for malicious prosecution, racial discrimination, and emotional distress.
Now, it feels great to have a voice, because in '89 we didn't have one.
We go to the Caribbean Sea, where a 16-inch gun turret of the United States Navy battleship USS Iowa exploded while on maneuvers, killing 47 American sailors. An initial investigation by the U.S. Navy was leaked and reported that crew member Clayton Hartwig deliberately caused the explosion after his sexual relationship with fellow crew member Kendall Truitt suddenly ended. However, the families of the victims and members of Congress questioned the findings of the Navy. A second investigation by the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House Armed Services Committees both found that an accidental overram of the powder bags in the turret most likely was the cause of the explosion. 5 days later, on April 24th, Tom Petty released Full Moon Fever, his first solo album since he formed the Heartbreakers in 1976. It wasn't completely a solo LP, though. Petty got contributions from the Heartbreakers' Mike Campbell, as well as ELO's Jeff Lynne, Beatles' George Harrison, as well as Roy Orbison. Petty's debut eventually went 5 times platinum, thanks to the 5 incredibly successful singles, I Won't Back Down, Running Down a Dream, and of course, Free Fallin', which he performed at the MTV Music Video Awards in 1989 with Axl Rose. In late April, Sergio Leone, the Italian film director who was credited as the creator of the spaghetti western, died from a heart attack at the age of 60. Leone's Dollars trilogy, featuring Clint Eastwood in A Fistful of Dollars, For a Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, are enough to designate him as one of the greatest and most influential directors in the history of cinema. Entering May, Michael Jordan made The Shot, which happened during Game 5 of the Eastern Conference First Round Series at Richfield Coliseum in Ohio. Down by 1 point with 3 seconds left on the clock, Jordan got the ball and...
Jordan with 2 seconds to go, puts it up and scores at the buzzer! Michael Jordan has won it for Chicago!
An iconic NBA moment. How did MJ do it?
Money's gotta be the shoes!
In what will become a theme for the next few years, Dan Quayle made one of his earliest gaffes as the Vice President of the United States when he gave a speech at a United Negro College Fund conference, and these words stumbled out of his mouth.
and you take the UNCF model that what a waste it is to lose one's mind or not to have a mind is being very wasteful.
Quayle was referring to the United Negro College Fund's tagline,
"A mind is a terrible thing to waste."
Hey, that was Marlon Wayans. Hang tight, you'll see a lot more of Quayle saying similar things.
It's good protein in the middle of the day.
Sorry we're closed. Well, then what are all these people doing here? Drinking and having a good time.
That's why like the crackers.
You're too stupid to have a good time.
It would be on May 22nd when O.J. Simpson pleaded no contest and submitted the plea to 1 count of spousal battery to charges that he beat his wife Nicole Brown at their Brentwood home. The 90s and O.J., we will definitely see you again.
Excellent movie.
Is humble. Kneels before God.
On June 4th, Poland held its first party-free election under communist rule in over 40 years, allowing the Solidarity trade union to defeat the Communist Party at the polls. The result of this election began the collapse of communism and the early stages of political change not only in Poland, but across Central and Eastern Europe. The following day, on June 5th, this unidentified Chinese man stood in front of a convoy of Type 59 tanks attempting to leave Tiananmen Square, the day after the Chinese military had suppressed the area's protests by force. To this day, little is known of Tank Man. Bruce Hershenson, the former deputy special assistant to President Nixon, alleged that the unidentified man was executed 14 days after the incident, while others claimed he was killed by firing squad several months later in the year. In mid-June, actor and socialite Zsa Zsa Gabor took her $215,000 Rolls-Royce out for a spin and ended up getting pulled over by a Beverly Hills motorcycle cop for expired car registration tags. While Officer Paul Kramer was looking for additional violations, Gabor drove off. When Kramer chased her down and pulled her over for the second time, Gabor Zsa Zsa'd the officer's face, stating she was acting in self-defense after he yanked her out of her car. Ultimately, Zsa Zsa was ordered to serve 3 days in jail. She had to pay every fine and retribution, totaling $12,937, and she had to perform 120 hours of community service.
They can take away my husband, they can take away my driver's license, but darling, don't touch my wheel. Don't touch my wheel.
3 days later, on June 21st, in a 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the landmark decision stating that burning the American flag as a political protest was protected by the First Amendment. The ruling came after the Texas versus Johnson Supreme Court case, where Joey Johnson, then a member in the Revolutionary Communist Youth Brigade, set an American flag on fire at a political demonstration during the 1984 Republican National Convention. The swing vote provided by Judge Antonin Scalia. Although Scalia voted in favor of Johnson's free speech, the judge was often heard grumbling about the case. More than once, Scalia mentioned that if he were king, he'd imprison anyone who desecrated the American flag, and called Johnson a bearded weirdo.
Don't kill me, man! Don't kill me! Don't kill me, man!
I'm not going to kill you. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to tell all your friends about me.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
In a second landmark court case in less than a week, the United States Supreme Court ruled on June 26 that, based on the Stanford versus Kentucky case, upheld the possibility of the death penalty for teens who were at least 16 years old at the time of their crime. Since the Supreme Court's 1989 decision, 19 teenagers have been executed. The majority of those have been 17, most are from the South, most die by lethal injection, and all are male.
See that button in the right button? The second button literally is the shirt. Look at it. It's too high. It's in no man's land. You look like you live with your mother.
July 10th, Mel Blanc, the man of 1,000 voices, died at age. According to Blanc, he began smoking at 9 years old, continuing his pack-a-day habit until he was diagnosed with emphysema at 77. Mel was the voice of so many iconic cartoon characters, from Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck to Porky Pig, Barney Rubble, and Speedy Gonzales. We go to the sky. Al Haynes, pilot of United Airlines Flight 232, at an altitude of 37,000 feet over Iowa when the tail-mounted engine on his DC-10 disintegrated, forcing a crash landing in Sioux City. With very limited ability to control the plane, Haynes landed the large 3-engine airliner carrying 292 passengers and crew. While 111 people on board perished in the disaster, Captain Haynes and his crew were heralded as heroes. But to Haynes, it was just another day on the job.
There is no hero. They're just a group of poor people who did their job.
At the end of July, Game Boy would make its American debut and take handheld gaming to an entirely different level.
Remember that?
But it wasn't always like that. The unit wasn't very popular in its early stages. Some Nintendo developers even called it Dame Game, with the word dame being Japanese for hopeless or lame. But Americans loved their Game Boys. They bought 40,000 units on the first day alone. With the Cold War coming to a close, the world's biggest heavy metal artists decided to band together to perform at the Moscow Music Peace Festival, which took place over the weekend beginning on August 12th. Some of the era's best hair bands performed that weekend, promoting world peace and established international cooperation in fighting the drug war in Russia. Ironic, considering the bill featured Skid Row, Motley Crue, Ozzy, and the Scorpions, bands who never really listen when asked to just say no. On August 20th, Lyle and Eric Menendez murdered their parents in cold blood in the family's Beverly Hills mansion. After spending an estimated $700,000 of their deceased father's Rolexes and restaurants, one of them bought a restaurant, detectives arrested the brothers off of a tip from Lyle's psychologist's mistress. Fast forward to July 2nd, 1996, when the brothers Menendez were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole after a lengthy trial televised on Court TV.
Does she always smell that good? Kelly? Impossible? Hey, you don't want anything to do with her. Why?
Yeah.
She's,
brand new
she
carbon
has
black.
On August 24th, Pete Rose accepted a lifetime ban from Major League Baseball, handed down by the new commissioner of baseball, A. Bartlett Giamatti. The Cincinnati Reds manager was charged with betting on Major League Baseball games, which started in 1985, and at least 52 of his own team's games in 1987, dropping up to $10,000 a day on his wagers. Giamatti's ban rendered all of Charlie Hustle's on-field accomplishments as null and void. More on Commissioner Giamatti in a minute. Leona Helmsley, the billionaire hotelier and shady real estate investor, was convicted of federal income tax evasion on August 30th. She was being sued by a group of contractors for refusing to pay services rendered to her 21-room mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut. Her former housekeeper testified that she once heard Helmsley scream, "We don't pay taxes, only the little people pay taxes." Also known as the Queen of Mean, Helmsley got off light. Helmsley only served 19 months of a 16-year prison sentence and an additional 2 under house arrest. 7 days after he banned Pete Rose from Major League Baseball, Commissioner A. Bartlett Giamatti died of a heart attack at his summer home in Martha's Vineyard. He was 51. Giamatti had only been the MLB's commissioner for 5 months, but he would appear again in a most unlikely place. Flash forward to October 22nd, 2004, when the film Sideways debuted. Bartlett's real son, Paul, playing Miles, used a real photograph of father and son Giamatti, which you can see here on his mother's dresser. Sideways. That was a pretty good movie. Back to 1989, where on September 6th, Madonna performed Express Yourself at the MTV Video Music Awards. Madonna's choreography for Express Yourself is absolutely charming, compared to what pop stars do on stage today to get noticed. But in 1989, a woman grabbing herself, dry humping the microphone stand, and wearing a black lace bustier over men's baggy trousers was all it took to throw conservative groups like the PMRC and Parents Television Council into a tailspin.
If Kathy learned anything from the earlier 2 contenders' experiences,
she might feel a little more comfortable on ice skates.
On September 10th, Barry Sanders played his first NFL game as a Detroit Lion, rushing for a respectable 71 yards and a touchdown
And this way I can separate
against the Phoenix Cardinals. The former Heisman Trophy winner made it to the Pro Bowl every season he played.
Let's watch part of the stream from the Let's Play part of
one
the
of the
stream.
greatest running backs ever. And he made impossible moves like this look routine.
There's no stop. chopping berries.
Quit eyeballing your dog. Because on September 18th, California Governor George Deukmejian signed a bill making it illegal in the Golden State to eat household pets, specifically, but not limited to, dogs and cats. Makes sense, but man, slow roasted Charlie? That's a good dog.
All right. You're okay. All right. It's a little boy. It's a little baby boy.
At the beginning of October, Denmark became the first country in the world to legally recognize same-sex marriages in the form of registered partnerships. Not bad, considering the country viewed homosexuality as an illness up to 1981. Another first took place on October 3rd when Art Shell became the first black man to be hired as an NFL head coach. Shell, a former offensive tackle with the Raiders from 1968 to 1982, returned to the team as the head coach until the 1994 season, only to return in 2006. On October 9th, TASS, the Soviet Union's central news agency, confirmed that a UFO had landed in a park in the city of Voronezh, approximately 300 miles southeast of Moscow. The TASS report noted the spacecraft contained 3 creatures, similar to humans, and a small robot, which all exited the UFO and explored the grounds. The report also noted their height, between 9 and 12 feet tall, and the size of their heads, very small, and their eyes, 3 of them. The report failed to report the date of the Voronezh alien visit, but 40 or so Soviet witnesses, adults and children, were consumed with fear that lasted for several days. In mid-October, Wayne Gretzky, the Great One, passed Gordie Howe's scoring record of 1,850 goals in a game against the team that traded him, the Edmonton Oilers at Edmonton. Gretzky's 1,000, and the fact that his former hometown fans got to be there for it was a nice touch by the hockey gods. Staying with sports, we go to Game 3 of the Bay Bridge World Series between the Oakland A's and the San Francisco Giants, which was interrupted by a 6.9 earthquake.
Second base, so the Oakland A's take.
I'll tell you what, we haven't heard.
The quake killed 67 people and caused more than $5 billion in damages. But experts stated that potentially thousands of lives were saved because most Bay Area residents were inside, getting ready to watch the game. We flash forward to October 27th, when play resumed when the Athletics beat the Giants 13-7, eventually sweeping San Francisco in 4 games the following day on October 28th. Later in the month, as part of their plant's opening celebration in Orrville, Ohio, Smith Dairy made and served the world's largest milkshake on record. The 1,575.2 gallon shake earned Smith Dairy a spot in that year's edition of Guinness Book of World Records. Heading into November, on the 9th, the Berlin Wall came down. The Berlin Wall had divided East and West Berlin since 1961. The event marked the fall of the Iron Curtain and hinted at the eventual fall of communism in Eastern and Central Europe. In related news, an eventual end of the dying Cold War was declared at the Malta summit 3 weeks later. But of course, one of the most memorable moments of the wall's fall, and to be honest, all of the 80s, was David Hasselhoff rocking the hell out of his single Looking for Freedom in a piano scarf and electric black leather jacket.
I've been looking for freedom.
I hate that it's so catchy.
The world was going through some massive changes in November. On the 17th, the Velvet Revolution began in Czechoslovakia as thousands of student protesters filled the streets of Prague, peacefully demanding freedom from their country's communist government. In the following days, these students were joined by other Czech citizens, and 3 days later, on November 20th, over 500,000 Czechs and Slovaks filled Prague's streets and took over Wenceslas Square, demanding an end to communism. The peaceful protests, which lasted until December 29th, worked. Czechoslovakia's communists were forced out of power, and during the final days of 1989, the Czechs elected Václav Havel, their first president since 1948. Staying with the then communist nations, on November 24th, Romanian leader Nicolae Ceausescu was unanimously re-elected Communist Party chief. It didn't last for long, because a month later to Christmas, December 25th, when Nicolae Ceausescu and his wife Elena were charged with genocide during the revolution in Timișoara. Ceausescu was found guilty, and he and his wife were swiftly escorted to an outdoor wall. Before news crews or reporters could record the execution, the firing squad fired, thus officially ending Romania's reign of communism. Well, that was fast.
You girls just stay here and relax.
Remember, Dad, the handle of the Big Dipper points to the North Star.
That's nice, Lisa, but we're not in astronomy class. We're in the woods.
We said there would be more quail. On December 19th, the vice president mailed out a batch of 30,000 Christmas cards, and in true Dan Quayle fashion, the holiday greeting inside the card included a fairly glaring typo. Quayle wrote, "May our nation continue to be the beacon of hope in the world." But somewhere between his mouth and the printer's, beacon was spelled with a K. B-E-A-K-O-N. Quayle shifted blame onto his wife, Marilyn. What a guy. Who in turn blamed Denise Balzano, Mrs. Quayle's chief of staff. The following day, on the 20th, the United States invaded Panama. During the month-long invasion, the Panamanian dictator Manuel Noriega fled to a Catholic sovereign entity, staying there for 10 days, while American soldiers blared tunes from AC/DC, The Clash, and Guns N' Roses, around the clock. And speaking of music, on December 23rd, 17-year-old Ice Cube left NWA, the band he co-founded with Eazy-E and Dr. Dre, after getting iced out by Jerry Heller, the rap group's manager, over royalties. But Cube had a legitimate reason for breaking away and going solo. He wrote the majority of NWA's debut, Straight Outta Compton, and all of Eazy's Easy Does It, for combined sales of over 5 million albums. Ice Cube earned a total of $32,000 for all of those sales. Flash forward to May 16th.
He got fucked on that deal real hard. Sorry, he got his just due.
Cube's debut would bomb, but it was universally praised by critics. It immediately went platinum, and it set up a rap rivalry between NWA and Cube, which produced some of the greatest rap beef tracks in the history of hip-hop. And with that, Ice Cube would be the last story of the 80s. The 80s. It was a beautiful time, and we hope you enjoyed this trip down memory lane. Be sure to watch or re-watch all of our Timeline 80s videos from 1980 through 1989. But we know why you're still here. What decade will Timeline do next? The 90s, 70s, 50s? Well, we've seen plenty of comments and even did a poll. We're going to take a break in between decades, but in the not-so-distant future, Season 2 of Timeline will be the 90s. But before that, we will be doing a special edition of Timeline. That is, if we make it. Coming soon. Timeline 2020. Boom. We will see you soon.
Yeah, we'll be looking
So
at
what
that.
do you think? What was your favorite story from Timeline the 80s? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, check out some...
Alright. So, maybe we will do that before at the end of the night. But I am going to go smoke the other half of my cigarette, and you enjoy the music from Total Eclipse. Make sure you give him a follow. Make sure that you check his stuff out. It is under the fair use. He said that we can use it in our content, which I appreciate very much. Thank you very much, sir. You're a scholar and a gentleman. After I come back, I'm gonna see how the game runs on the cloud, and if it's good, then we'll do it from there. But if not, I'll have to download it and get it set up real quick. It's gonna be, or it's one of the Xbox cloud games, so I'm gonna see what it's like to play on the cloud, and it's let's add this over here. Yeah, so XO1, and I do like space games. I'm gonna get back to EVE Online as well, but that seems like a very involved game, and I'm not exactly looking for like a full Steam space RPG just yet, because it seems a little involved. But I am looking for something that I can see, and I know No Man's Sky, but that's a whole nother motherfucking thing right there. Probably will do it in the near future. I'll find out if it's on Game Pass. I don't. Maybe. But you can see what. You know what? When I get back, we'll do that. We'll look at the a video, some blah blah blah. Read the blurb, and then we'll go in and play it. Okay? So I shall be back. Enjoy the music. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and end this recording here with that nice music.